So we go on to our next session, which is one of our How I Do It sessions. And this is on ABOi liver transplantation. And the speaker for this will be Professor Subhas Gupta, who's the chief liver transplant and hepatobiliary surgeon at Max Hospital in Delhi. And to chair this, I invite Dr. Amit Rastogi, who's a senior consultant transplant surgeon at Medanta Hospital in Gurgaon, and Dr. Murugan, chief hepatologist at Apollo Hospitals, Chennai. I think Dr. Murugan is not well and he'll not be joining us, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Professor Gupta, uh, please.
Okay, shall I start? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, so let's see where I can get to screen sharing. So first, I think I've changed the title slightly, but that slight change has an enormous meaning. It's not how I do it; it's how we do it because ABO incompatible liver transplantation requires help from many disciplines, blood bank, so sort of hepatologists, surgeons, anesthetists. So it should really be how we do it. And the plan of the talk will be we'll first talk about the need for ABOi in compatible liver transplantation. And there is a huge need. And most of the protocols are now rituximab based protocols. And the olden days of splenectomy, graft infusion, prostaglandins have all gone. Give some illustrative cases to highlight how they can be done even in sick patients. Post-operative issues that may arise after ABOi incompatible liver transplantation, our experience of over 50 cases, and in the end, a recommendation and summary. So there is an urgent need for ABOi liver transplantation because the Human Transplant Act requires that most donors should be near relatives. Otherwise, the clearance is difficult. So 75% of our donors are near related. And currently, at our hospital, particularly, swaps between recipients who has blood group O or is a foreigner or is not a near relative is not possible. And in case of emergency transplant, the paperwork for early transplant is lengthy and the clearance may take a lot of time if there's a second degree relative. So because of this huge number of patients that we see who are very sick and I mean called ACLF nowadays, uh, so the results of transplantation of ABO compatible liver transplantation for this group is similar. And therefore, we felt that it may not be appropriate to deny ABO incompatible liver transplants to those with who are sick as well. So what happens in ABO incompatible liver transplantation? There are two problems. One is hepatic necrosis from early antibody-mediated rejection, which is mostly taken care of by use of rituximab. And then, of course, that what is not taken care of is occasionally still you'll get diffuse intrahepatic biliary strictures leading to retransplantation later on. So what about efficacy of rituximab desensitization from different centers? This is by Professor Igawa from Japan. He looked at patients from 37 institutions, 381 patients, and he showed that number of important points he made. First of all, that he showed that it's completely feasible to do. Second, he highlighted that one dose of rituximab was sufficient. If you wanted to use multiple doses, then you would end up with CM infection or fungal sepsis. He also said IVIG did not seem to affect outcome, and this is what has been our experience. We'll share with you later on. And timing of rituximab before transplant is not important. That's what he said in the paper. But if you look at 381 patients, only 22 out of these were given rituximab less than 7 days. So I don't know how he came to this conclusion. And in if you look at the sort of outcomes between compatible and compatible liver transplant, interestingly, this is a paper by Professor Igawa again. The 1 year survival and 2 years 2 years were actually better than in compatible liver transplantation. Perhaps maybe eliminating some of the antibody mediated rejection that we were hearing in the last session, which perhaps gives a better outcome in these patients. And similar to this has been experienced from the Asan Medical Center, which has studied 235 patients between 2008 and 2013. The ABO incompatible group had a slightly lower MEL score, but the authors kind of say that on propensity score matched survival analysis, there was no difference. The biliary stricture rate was higher, and they used IVIG for biopsy proven acute antibody mediated rejection. And they said that the results were similar even when there was high initial anti-ABO isoglutinin titers. And they emphasized that mean pre-liver transplant desensitization duration should be more than 2 weeks, which again in keeping with our own thoughts. So using the ABO desensitization protocol with rituximab, Professor Lee and his co-workers shown that you actually get a comparable uh, sort of patient survival, but the graft survival with ABO incompatible was lower, and therefore some patients went on to have retransplantation from biliary strictures. And this he highlighted again in another paper where he showed that although they may survive initially, if they develop ischemic type biliary strictures, then they will end up having a retransplant later on. So it's definitely worth doing ABO compatible liver transplantation if you have sufficient time for preparation, and it's possible even in sick patients. So what do you do when you have to do an urgent living donor liver transplantation? For example, you have to do an acute liver failure, or somebody with, say, hepatic artery thrombosis, or somebody with ACLF with more than 3 organ failure. Now, it seems that a minimum of 3 to 4 days are necessary for the effect of rituximab on B cells. Total plasma exchange may wash away rituximab, so therefore it would not make sense to start that plasma exchange before 4 days are over. And in case of low titers, rituximab can be given on the day of surgery. However, this has not been in our own experience, this has not helped in improving outcomes, and we can, of course, in the question answer session, discuss it with other speakers from different centers. And there may be modified desensitization protocols using IVIG, immunoabsorption, but generally the experience is lacking. And the only one sort of big series that I could get, reported series that I got from literature, is one from China, in which a modified protocol with rituximab and IVIG in emergent ABO incompatible liver transplantation for acute failure was reported. With 35 patients, and all of them apparently no pheresis, IVIG for 10 consecutive days, basiliximab twice a day on day 1 and day 4. And also these patients, because most of them were hepatitis B, they were given high doses of hepatitis B immunoglobulin, and they had a higher mortality and worse survival, but similar to other sort of ABO-compatible liver transplantation for acute liver failure. And this suggested that ABO-compatible liver transplantation could be a good indication for ALF. However, there are many criticisms of this. Only 31.4% were in the ICU prior to transplantation. Over 90% were hepatitis B, and ILF is usually of unknown viral etiology. And many underwent plasmapheresis as part of medical therapy for ALF, although that was referred to as sort of therapeutic plasmapheresis, not pheresis directed toward. But I'm sure this would have cleared the titers as well. The the other important information that was lacking in this paper was the interval between decision to transplant and the actual transplant. Mean titers were low, and it was fairly expensive treatment regimen with 30 grams of IVIG for 10 days, HBIG, basiliximab, 4 lakhs. So that was overall a very expensive regimen, and I'm sure if we try to reproduce those results in ALF patients, in India, we will not be able to do it. So, looking at another sort of report in 2020, uh, we had seven patients who were acutely sick who needed emergent transplantation, and two out of these seven died. But they said that the results are improving with time. So I'll take you some sick patients that we did, just one or two, just to sort of tell you how difficult ABO incompatible transplants can be. The course, post-operative course. So this was a 60-year-old dentist who had a stroke, and there's a lot of emotional sort of play here because the mother had died recently, and the son's very keen to do everything for the father. So he had refractory ascites from NASH and HCC, which was within Milan criteria. And because of him being blood group O, swap was not possible, and we did a ABO incompatible. So multiple sessions of plasmapheresis post-transplant was really sort of difficult because the titers would keep rebounding. He had hypertensive crisis post-discharge, which needed tracheostomy, but he had major improvement in hemiplegia. And interestingly, we found that he had proteinuria, but gradually that improved. And this proteinuria business has actually been quite common with our in our group who've had ABO incompatible liver transplantation. So there's another sick recipient that we sort of did about 8 months ago or a year ago. This is a young girl, 12-year-old, who had multiple sort of tubes, infection, cholangitis, and had sort of the donor had COVID, so that at the time of the operation had to be postponed, and then underwent a very difficult operation. As you can see, there is sort of tubes inside the liver, and there's also portal cavernoma, and did a Roux-en-Y hepatogoginoscopy to two ducts. And again, required multiple sessions of post-operative plasmapheresis. And but after 2 weeks, we started ignoring the titers, and there was a minor bile leak which needed drainage, and she was discharged on day 29. And we, as part of our sort of monitoring of the ABO incompatible grafts, we do frequent MR scannings, and this was done on day 10, which is quite good. And day 29, when she had some fever, you can see that there's areas which shows edema in the graft. There's sort of areas of necrosis, and based on this, we made a diagnosis of rejection. Of course, we did a biopsy, but we started treatment even before the biopsy results were there, and the biopsy showed that there was a quite significant rejection, and she responded to steroid bolus. Then later on day 36, we repeated the sort of MR, and we found that the area has become smaller as compared to before, and the LFT liver function tests had become better. So what are the clinical issues in ABO incompatible living donor liver transplantation? For ALF, most patients have been referred for immediate transplant. If they come to a transplant center, it's quite clear that if you don't do the transplant quickly, most of them will die because, for whatever reason, because I think uh, there are centers which are good in hepatology and centers which are good in transplantation. So by and large, a patient who comes to a transplant surgeon, if you don't transplant them quickly, they die. So you really have time to prepare them. Then ACLF with organ failure, there's one big advantage here because many of these patients have had multiple sessions of plasmapheresis and their actual indirect hemagglutinin titers may be low. But these are patients who also have very high proportion of early graft dysfunction. And I'll share data with you later on. If after ABO incompatible liver transplantation, if they have early graft dysfunction, then usually we cannot save these patients. So early graft dysfunction, ABO incompatible liver transplantation from our own series, higher incidence as well as poor outcome. And 5 out of 59 of our patients had early graft dysfunctions, died subsequently. Therefore, we need to be careful about volume, quality, and MHV reconstruction of these grafts. Blood loss should be minimal, ischemic time should be short, and bile leak to be avoided. Although you may aim to have a high ratio, but we feel that as a group that the graft volume is perhaps more important than the ratio. And we shown in this paper that we published last year that once you have greater than 650 grams, then your ratios issues are solved. So there are some post-operative issues in ABO incompatible living donor liver transplantation that we face quite commonly. The rising titers, otherwise the patient is well. The bilirubin is falling trend. Platelets may be sort of on the falling trend. If they're increasing, then we don't bother. Portal flows are maintained. Liver biopsy usually we do not do in the first week. MR is satisfactory. But if they're doubling of titers in 12 hours, then they will go on straight to have plasmapheresis. What to do after 2 weeks? We tend to ignore the titer values after 2 weeks and usually adjust immunosuppression. And certainly after 1 month, it does not matter. Post-operative fever can be from rejection, and negative blood cultures are important. MR fluid collections with bile leak will give you a clue. And we use the MR findings to decide what is to be done. Because in our center, the biopsy reports typically takes more than 48 hours to come. So these graphs, it's important that you have no areas of necrosis, particularly. So middle vein reconstruction takes importance, particularly if we do not take middle vein from the donors, and therefore you need to have a very excellent middle vein reconstruction, because if there are areas of sort of necrosis and congestion, then ABO compatible liver transplant results are not good. So now to just give you an idea of what we've been doing since 2014, we've been actively promoting ABO incompatible liver transplant. Although we've been doing that for a longer time, but since 2014, our protocols have sort of standardized, and we know exactly what to do because we know what to expect on different days post transplantation. So numbers have gradually been increasing, and this year we've already done four ABO incompatible liver transplantation. And in fact, it is now, it figures in our weekly audit, the ABO incompatible liver transplant is actually because we do it quite frequently nowadays. So I've been actively promoting ABO incompatible since 2014. Total number of 59. And these are patients who were very sick. The CTP scores were 12, MELD scores were 29. And post-operatively, that higher bilirubin, the peak bilirubin INRs and hospital stay were comparable with the group who had ABO compatible liver transplantation. So there's a sort of, we did very sick patients, very young patients, the very old patients as well, or those who had the ACLF. And we, similar to sort of our experience in compatible liver transplantation, we had good results in older recipients as well. So sick recipients we defined as those who were less than 1 year or greater than 60 years. The for reasons, not because ABO incompatible liver transplantation is probably easier in less than one, but these are patients who have very high incidence of portal vein thrombosis because they are less than 6 kgs and requires. So this group we put as high risk. Male was 40, advanced sort of medical comorbidities, more than 3 organ dysfunction, and there were 35 out of these 59 were high-risk recipients. Most of our ABO incompatible were from B group, O group recipients, because as is our sort of problem here, we cannot do swaps for if the patient has recipient has blood group O. A1, A2, we tried to look at it, but we rarely find any donor who's A2 here. And we had lots of complications. We had sort of, as I said earlier, we had 5 out of 59 patients who had early graft dysfunction, OMR, and they died. Biliary complications seen in 14%, AMR in 7 out of 59 patients, of which 2 died. One patient had the hemolytic uremic syndrome, and we managed this with the regular, frequent plasmapheresis, daily plasmapheresis. And a lot of patients had proteinuria post transplantation. A word about IVIG. Has been used in a number of ways. Some groups have used it on days 1 and 4. Some groups have suggested that use consecutively for 10 days in urgent transplantation. Some groups have used it for treatment of AMR. We've used it for a case with microangiopathic thrombocytopenia, but we find that it rarely does what it's supposed to do. So our protocol now is completely IVIG free. The current protocol is rituximab 2 weeks prior to transplantation. Children less than 2 years are only given if titers are greater than 16, and 375 milligram per beta squared, I think capped at 375. Plasmapheresis, multiple session. Target titers are less to less than 116. A 24-hour gap is given prior to transplantation. I think we learned lessons that you should not transplant them immediately after, as the kidney guys do. So the ABO titers are monitored twice daily for 2 weeks, and in case there is doubling in two consecutive values of plasmapheresis done, on day 5, 6, and 7, they'll all get methylprednisolone 500 milligram bolus. Prophylactic heparin is given after 24 hours. Fungal prophylaxis is given with liposomal amphotericin 5B, 5 days, and CMV prophylaxis. So in summary, ABO compatible liver transplant should be the first choice in sick recipients. However, if there is sufficient time, ABO incompatible will give similar results but is much more expensive. ALF may not be suitable for ABOi incompatible living donor liver transplantation, considering the time restraints. And ALF should have had many sessions of plasmapheresis ACLF, and therefore titers are generally low and may be suitable for ABO incompatible liver transplantation. And in our own experience, MR and MRCP often aids in diagnosis and management. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Subhas Gupta. A very informative and a very practical presentation, and I'm sure there would be a lot of questions. So maybe first I'll ask the questions which the audience have asked, and then we can take the discussion forward. So this question is from Dr. Uday Sangolkar. He says that he asked, does immunosuppression protocol differs in ABOi? What is the difference if it is? So what is your personal experience, Dr. Subhas?
We use the same protocol, but one thing that we do in ABO incompatible, which is that we'll often omit, if we suspect that somebody may be having an infective episode, what we call in our department the about turn policy, graft function is not good, we may withhold, even reduce immunosuppression for 48 hours, see how the outcome is, and then if it's not worked, then we'll go in the opposite direction. But in ABO incompatible liver transplant, we do not, we continue with the immunosuppression rather than, but the doses, the levels remain the same. We notice that on day 5, most of them will have, even if they don't have nowadays, we'll electively pulse them on day 5, 6, and 7 with methylprednisolone 500 milligrams daily for 3 days.
So you mean the cases where you did not get time to prepare, you would definitely pulse them from day 5, 6?
So in all.
In all.
Yeah.
So that's a little different from.
Because you see the groups who give immunosuppression pre-transplant. We do not. Our patients so sick we can risk that. So we start in the same way as ABO compatible. If once in the evening it's down to less than 3, then we'd give them immunosuppression, and on day 5 we'll pulse them. But the levels remain the same.
So you do not believe in little higher tech level initial 2 weeks as
no.
Okay, and even for emergency.
But we'll do other things. We'll do other things like CMV prophylaxis, heparin, and fungal prophylaxis. In fact, these are big issues in them.
So for chronic as well as for acute cases, your immunosuppression will not change. And it is almost like any other liver transplant. And a little extension of this question.
Except main change, the two important changes. Nobody is allowed to omit immunosuppression ABO incompatible. It has to be done by a committee decision if somebody wants to. So that's a big change. And second is on day 5, they'll get methylprednisolone bolus.
Okay. And extension of this question, do you advise early introduction of additional immunosuppression like Certican or maybe at 1 month, or you do as you do for ABO compatible transplants?
As I showed you in our data, a lot of our patients have proteinuria, and I'm still not figured out why that is. And so I don't think Certican would be a good drug in that context. We have not used it.
Okay. Dr. Somashekhar says, this question partly you've answered. How frequently ABO titers are monitored during follow-up period and for how long?
After 1 month, we stop bothering with it. But the first 2 weeks, they'll be done twice a day.
But after 1 month, you do not worry about the levels.
You can even bother. Yeah. But we do measure, but we don't worry about it.
Dr. Naren Chaudhary says that ABO incompatible liver transplant locked-up outcomes are similar or worse to ABO compatible in adults. 1 year survival will remain good even in presence of multiple biliary strictures. So he says that if you look at 1 year, it would be good, but long term, it would be different.
Yeah. But if you, in the first year itself, you'll get to know whether they've had diffuse ischemic type strictures or not. In the
And
first year itself, you'll get to know. So there will be, so as I showed in the presentation, that the 1 year and 2 year data is actually better, but the graft loss is more. And so later on, they may require retransplantation. But if they don't have it in the first year, then they don't get it.
okay.
That's a very important point I'm saying here.
And any experience of splenectomy in emergency ABOi or for graft rescue is asked by Dr. Kumar Palaniappan.
No, we've not done, and I would advocate. I think splenectomy, splenic artery, like I somehow it's not. We have somebody on the board right now who we thought, because his splenic artery seemed so big, we tied his splenic artery, and he's again. I mean, this had been after a long time, and he's sort of having septic episodes now. I don't think it's a good thing to do splenic artery ligation or splenectomy. So if you do splenectomy, then you get definitely higher incidence of portal vein thrombosis.
And Dr. Suma Shekhar, one last question from audience. What should be the timing of rituximab in the setting of ALF or ACLF? So if you have ALF, when do you?
Yeah. As I said, we strongly believe, and in keeping with the sort of data from San Medical Center, that it must be at least 2 weeks before the planned transplant. But in the Igawa sort of experience from multi-center, he said that it could be, the timing didn't matter. But the number of patients in that group, only 22 actually received rituximab in less than 7 days before transplantation. And in cases of emergency transplantation, if you want to do ABOi incompatible for ALF, I mean, we really have time to prepare them. So a concept of sort of giving them, I mean, the closest we can do is do the sort of experience from China. We're giving IVIG for 10 days. But again, I found that most of these patients, 31 patients of the patients are only in the ICU. The remaining 70 patients are not in the ICU. And I was wondering what kind of ALF that is. So I don't know. We've not attempted, and I don't think we're going to attempt with for ALF either, ABOi incompatible.
And sir, personally, do you think over the years, are the complications of ABOi incompatible decreasing, or still it's a problematic thing and you should avoid it as far as possible?
No. I don't think we should avoid ABOi incompatible. It gives excellent results. There is a question of, as Dr. Narendra Chaudhary was saying, that there is an issue. But, there are issues with liver transplantation, other issues with ABOi. You can have arterial thrombosis, or you can have other issues. But, by and large, it's quite, if we keep the ischemic time short, it's manageable. We've had 2-3 patients who had sort of diffuse intrahepatic biliary strictures, but they seem to be doing well on lowered immunosuppression and rotating antibiotics. And so I think it's something that within the way the legal structure is such that there is no way, most females only can come forward for donation in our country. You have to do within related families. Either you say not do it, or you'll have to do ABOi incompatible liver transplantation.
Yeah, for a program, it makes sense, especially for emergency, but it's a very important decision making. Traditionally, it is said that you should do incompatible in patients who are stable enough, because you have to do immunosuppress more, you have to do plasmapheresis. But then if you do in stable patients, the results are better, but they can wait and they can.
Okay, believe me, it is.
I think you're looking, sir, you're
well. Yeah. I mean, huge number now, and
yes, sir. Can you repeat it? We lost your audio a bit. Hello.
Okay, I was saying that with the current, can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
I think with the current sort of protocol and our own sort of, I must say in the beginning, we I didn't know on day 5 they need a little boost of immunosuppressive dose. I didn't realize that that congested areas will transplantation, and so there are many things that So once you get all your facts right, all of things right, then the outcome is
I
Can
think
you hear? I don't think you can hear.
Yeah, I think,
One
Amit,
second.
maybe we can just end the
Uh-huh.
session. We're running late also. Yeah.
okay. So just last, we'll just
Okay.
2 questions. I'll ask them also. So Dr. Raghavendra says that is there any difference if you do ABO incompatible for things like PSC or autoimmune? And the other question is there anything different if you do ABOi for HCC?
HCC, I can answer that question straight away. No difference, no increased sort of recurrence rate. PSC and PBC of course no difference. PSC, I don't know. I would be a bit hesitant to do it at the current moment, because even with compatible, sometimes you end up with sort of biliary issues. So PSC, I think I would be a little bit reluctant. We haven't done so far. For most of our cases have been alcoholic liver disease.
Okay, so for want of time, we would end, but maybe I'm sure there are many more issues which even I or other people will want to answer. We'll ask Dr. Gupta, but maybe Neeraj, we can end the session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for a wonderful talk, and thank you, Amit, for chairing this session.